Hey y'all, welcome to week 7 of your first year of drum lessons. My name is Penny Larson and I am very excited to have you with me today, and I hope you've been following along as we go. This is your chance to, whether you live in Tibet or Australia or China or England or France or Boston, Massachusetts, or Los Angeles, California, to see what it might be like to take drum lessons with me. And I'm really happy to have you joining me on this journey. Today we're going to continue our studies. We're going to do some more things with accents. We're going to learn another new rudiment, another Flam rudiment. And we are going to learn our first snare drum solo. Whew, that sounds so scary. So, let's buckle up. Let's hop into it. Let's start with our new accent patterns. We're going to use 16th notes, and we're just going to play accents on different points of the groups of 4 16th notes. These are all going to be 4-note patterns that repeat through the whole measure. These are totally about just practicing these patterns and getting them down so that when we move on and we have accents that move around a little bit, we won't be taken completely by surprise. So here's the handout. It'll be available down below in the doobly-doo. We're using our arrows again. We have a new element today, a little dot. And a dot, I mentioned briefly tap strokes last week. The dot just means a tap stroke. What's a tap stroke? A tap stroke is a quiet note that starts with your stick low and continues with your stick low. So up until now, we've had full strokes, loud note, get ready for another loud note. So we've had downstrokes, so a loud note that then prepares for a quiet note, and we've had upstrokes. Quiet note that prepares for a loud note. A tap stroke is a quiet note that prepares for another quiet note. So let's take a look at this first one, and we'll see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to play accents with my right hand. Again, we're using 16th notes. I'm going to play on the first partial of each beat. And the first partial just means I'm dividing the beat into 4 sections, 4 16th notes, 4 equal pieces, 4 partials. One of the things about music and drumming, there's a million ways to say the same thing sometimes. I will try to give you all the different ways I've ever heard of people explaining things, because a lot of times that is down to a matter of what part of, I'm from the United States, obviously, but so what part of the United States you grew up in, and what dialect of drumming was spoken there, and I'm sure things are called different things in other countries too, right? So the 4 sections of the 16th note we can think of as 4 partials. They are a partial beat, right? So the first pattern is just an accent on the first partial. And if you want to think about just your right hand, check this out. So I'm going to play 8th notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, okay? So I've just got that up, down, up, down, up, down thing that we've done already. I'm going to put the left hand in between all of those, right? Like 16th notes are. on the E's and the Ahs as tap strokes. So 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1. Make sense? Okay. So that's the first one. All we're going to do is move that accent around to the 4 different partials. And then the bottom 2, we're going to do something a little different, but if anything, even easier. Okay, so the second line, we're going to put the accent on the E. So that means the left hand is going to go 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and and the right hand on the numbers and the ands is going to do those little taps. E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1. Okay. The third line, the right hand is going to be on the ands with the accent, and so the numbers will be quiet, and the E's and Ahs are going to be quiet again. So 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 and 4 E and 1. And then the last one is on the Ahs, right? So 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1. The last 2 lines, like I mentioned, are a little different. The next to last line, all the right hands are accented, all the left hands are quiet. So literally all we're doing is full strokes with the right hand and tap strokes with the left hand. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1. And then the bottom line is the left hand is accenting the E's and the Ahs. So same thing, just flipped. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1. There are a couple adjustments we're going to make if we're going to play this as a whole exercise straight through. The first one is at the end of the 4th line, the right hand needs to do an upstroke to get ready for this accent here. And then at the end of the 5th line, the left hand needs to do an upstroke to get ready for its accents here. And then at the end of the line, instead of doing a full stroke, the left hand needs to do a tap stroke to get ready to go back to the top. But let's try that whole thing from top to bottom and see how it goes. 1, 2, ready, go. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 and 3 and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 and 3 and 4 E and 1 E and 2 and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 and 3 and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 and 3 and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 I had a little flub in the middle there, and so I did it twice more. So you're going to make mistakes as you practice, and probably even if you're performing on stage, you're probably going to make mistakes too, because mistakes are a thing. And it's a really good habit to get into. Just press on, go right through your mistakes, pretend you didn't make it. Okay, you want to have a really short memory when it comes to mistakes. You want to make it process anything that you need to fix on the fly, right, to recover from the mistake and move on, and then just forget that it happened. Okay? For the most part, unless it's something really terrible, I am not going to edit out my mistakes in these lessons so you can see what it's like for a human to play these things. And I'm trying not to make mistakes, but human. So that's the 16th basic accent pattern. We could try it with a metronome. Let's try it a little bit faster. So let's try it at 120, which will be a little bit faster. I'm probably not going to count it out loud, but just so you can see what it'll sound like up to speed. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1, 2, ready, go. Okay, 120 is like a really nice tempo to kind of shoot for a lot of these exercises. 120 is sort of right on the cusp of where things get like moderately fast, right? 120 is like almost like a brisk walking pace, and that's where music tends to feel a little energetic and a little bright. And so obviously, you know, our long-term goal is to get all this stuff superhumanly fast, right? But 120 is a nice kind of, oh, I should be shooting for that kind of tempo. Okay, so that's our 16th note accent patterns. The flam that we did last week, we're going to add a tap. And this is number 22, the Flam Tap. All it is a flam and then a tap with the same hand that was the high hand. Okay, so flam, tap, flam, tap, flam, tap, flam, tap. You want to work to have just as good flam technique as we had last week, and then do that tap, and then at first, I usually think of these as eighth notes, right? So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. And just like the regular flams before them, it's important to be very strict and specific with your technique. Okay, you want to keep these nice and separated. keep that tap pretty low. As these speed up, flam tap, flam tap. As they speed up, they're going to get looser, and those taps are going to just come up a little bit just because the nature of the beast. We're playing 3 notes with each hand, right? And so these are a little bit of a workout for your hands as they speed up, but that's what makes them awesome. And that's why they can sound so chunky when they really get going. So make sure that you're really being strict with your technique. No cheating early on, right? Because we're going to need that separation as they speed up, and the separation just, physics is physics, right? And as you go faster, you're not going to have as much time to make as big motions. So as the motions shrink, you have to make sure that at the very least they stay in the proper proportion to each other, right? That the flams are still higher, the taps are still lower, and that it still sounds like chugga 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 chugga. Okay? All right. So lastly for today, super scary, we're going to start working on our first snare drum solo. I wrote this a few years ago. It's called Talking Points. It is using only the quarter notes, eighth notes, quarter rests, and eighth rests that we learned a couple weeks ago. Okay? So like then, we have only 4 possibilities that can exist on a beat. And like the accent exercise, this will be available down below in the doobly-doo. And I've written in a sticking, and we've talked a little bit about right hand lead. We're going to get more into that in a couple weeks. For now, just trust me that sticking decisions are all kind of arbitrary to a certain extent. There is a method to my madness of why the sticking is like this. Okay? So, everywhere you'll see I have either quarter notes or 2 eighth notes on a beat. When we have 4 eighth notes or sometimes even 3 eighth notes, we can beam those together to make them easier to read. Or I have quarter rests, or I have eighth rests and eighth notes. That's it. Those are the only 4 elements. And so if you've mastered those 4 elements, reading through this shouldn't be too tricky. If you get confused and if you're feeling overwhelmed, you can write in the counting above, right? So this first measure is 1, 2, 3, and 4. And as we play through it right now, I will count out loud so you can see how that works. You might notice one other thing. There's an MF, there's a P, there's another P, there's a cresc, which we haven't even talked about yet. These are our dynamics, right? And we talked about dynamics before. We are not going to play this with dynamics this week. Our first goal is to learn the rhythm and the sticking. Okay, as you learn pieces of music, there will be a hierarchy of things that you need to learn first. Sometimes the dynamics might be the most important thing. I guarantee if you were playing with a symphony and you play the slightly wrong rhythm, and the slightly wrong sticking, honestly, a conductor doesn't care what sticking you use. He just wants the sound. But if you played the slightly wrong rhythm, but you played it at the right volume, he would be more happy than if you played the perfect rhythm, but it was supposed to be quiet and you played it really loud, right? That would be much more of a problem. So sometimes the dynamic is higher up on the hierarchy. But for us, for this week, we are going to learn just the notes and the sticking. Okay? So, get ready to follow along. The first time through, I'm going to do it without the metronome, we'll play it with the metronome too, so you can see how that sounds. I'm going to count out loud, so you can see how that works. Maybe when I play it with the metronome, I won't count out loud, so you can see how that works too. Like I mentioned a couple weeks ago, I tend to count the notes that I'm playing and not the ands in between. If you're more comfortable just counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and the whole way, that is totally cool. In some ways, that's a really good way to give yourself the support of that grid to make sure that you're always keeping the notes steady. Okay, so here we go. Remember, we're not going to pay attention to the dynamic markings, just the notes and the sticking. All right, nice and slow. 1, 2, ready, go. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 and 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. And 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4. 1, 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4. 1, 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Okay. Not too bad, I hope. There's a lot of notes from the top of the page to the bottom of the page. There are definitely some sections that I wrote specifically to be a little confusing, okay? So don't worry if your eyes are kind of glazing over at a couple points. That's totally normal. Let's put on the metronome. Let's play it a little bit faster, not too fast. We'll save that for once we put in the dynamics. And again, we're probably shooting for about that 120 mark. But for now, let's try 100 beats a minute and see how that goes. So again, I think I'm not going to count out loud purposely. I might let it slip here and there for the rests, but I'll just play through it. 1, 2, ready, go. Okay, not too bad, right? Again, There's a lot of notes from the top of the page to the bottom of the page. A lot of times what I'll tell students to do is to play the first 2 lines or the first 4 lines, which is the first half, right? Anytime, remember the rule, right? Anytime you're feeling overwhelmed or you get a piece of music and you think, oh my God, there's so much on this page, just break it into smaller pieces, right? You, right now, you, every single one of you, right now, can play any song that's ever been written 1 note at a time, okay? Any song that's ever been written, 1 note at a time. So now that we know that, all that we have to do to play any piece that's ever been written, which, you know, playing it up to tempo and with good musical interpretation and all that stuff, maybe that'll take a little while, right? But the fact that you could play it right now, 1 note at a time, means that everything is within your grasp, okay? So if you ever feel overwhelmed by anything we do here, or really anything that anyone ever presents to you in any subject, know that you can do it. You just need to break it down into pieces that you can digest now, and digest them and put them together, and gradually you will be able to take bigger and bigger pieces. And it's not even that you will be taking bigger and bigger pieces. Those bigger pieces will seem small to you, right? Once you get to a certain point, the pieces that you need to break things into will be much smaller. You'll be sight reading this page before you know it, okay? So don't fret if this feels like a lot of stuff, okay? So that's gonna wrap it up for today. We got our accent patterns with 16th notes, we got our Flam Taps, and we have our first snare drum solo. I am so excited. Now we're starting to be able to make music with the things that we're learning over here. We will, before we're done, we will play this on a snare drum so you can see what it really sounds like instead of just on the pad. The pad is really great for us to work on a lot of things, but when it comes to snare drum solos, we're trying to play music, we want to play it on a snare drum. So either next week or the week after, we'll break out the snare drum and see how that goes, okay? So please remember to like this video. Please subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot. If you really love me, you can hit the little notification bell and get notified every time I release a new video. And that's all. So I will see you on Friday for our drum set lesson. I hope you guys are having a great week. I hope you're having fun with the material. I'm having so much fun sharing it with y'all. And until I see you again, I love you guys. Peace. Take it easy.